What is going on today, guys? Welcome back to the Armory. We are going to be doing a tutorial for GB Studio today on how to get a score heads-up display with more than just using one tile. So previously we've done it where, numbers 1 or 0 through 100 were in one 8x8 tile here, but you really can't fit anything over 100, and you definitely can't fit 1,000. So this tutorial is going to be how to get a heads-up display and get it to count the score, basically up to 9,999, and with one digit in each tile. So before we jump into the actual coding, we'll talk about how to set it up in in your pixel art software. So you guys probably already know this, but each one of these needs to be a unique 8x8 tile in your image. So if you're going to use the commands that we're going to use, so that's pulling up a 8x8 tile that will be on another sheet once the variables are accumulating. So these all need to be unique. I just used a tile set here to do like a quick platformer. So these are unique to the scene. So obviously we have score and we have our little blocks that we need to jump on. So my game basically you're going to score points by jumping and moving around, since it's just a simple one scene tutorial. So the other thing that's nice about this though is your numbers, you really only need 0 through 9 in their own 8x8 tiles. So that's basically your reference for the score. It's 0, 1, 2, all the way through 9, and that's it. You don't have to write out 0 through 100 down here, because each one of these is going to be the digits. But the coding gets more complicated, so it took me a little bit to figure it out. But we'll dive into it. One last thing you're going to need is a stealth actor. So in Sprite, or I should say in GB Studio, this value right here is the transparent color, the hex code right here. So I use that to keep track of different things. So it's in at least all my games, pretty much, at least once in all my games. So you can go ahead and make one of those for your game. All right, so we'll go ahead and hop over to GB Studio. Alright, so here's what I have in the game. So I have my platformer scene right here, and I also have this number scene, which I don't believe actually needs to be shown, but I have it here for demonstration purposes. So we have our scene. I've set up my collisions, so I have it set to platformer. So as you guys know, as soon as your player drops in, he's going to kind of drop down because we have gravity here. Like this, if you've seen Wicked, you know what I'm saying? So this is where our guy's going to land. In this case, we're just going to use the arrow guy. So I have my collision set up using this tool here. And I'm just using this red block. So my actors here, I have two stealth guys up in the corner with no collision value, but we'll talk about those in a moment. So let's go ahead and get started. So on init of my scene, I want to set up some variables for my score. I need to set these variables up. So this is really a two-part process. You need to set your variables, and then you need to show the player your variables with the GBVM script. So let's dive into that. So the first thing we want to do, and I just have it set up as an event group for easy viewing, is to set up 4 variables: score 1, score 10, score 100, and score 1,000. So you can do that basically if you use the command set var variable set to value. It will ask you which variable and what value. So you can drop down here, and right in this menu you can change the name with the pencil and enter and set your variable. So I want to do score, and I need 4 variables for this. So score in the ones column, score in the tens column, score in the hundreds column, and score in the thousands column. So I'm setting that all to 0. At the beginning of the game, I want that to be 0. So to do the tile swapping, make sure those are global variables too. That's important to know. Make sure they're global. And especially if you have different levels, you want that to carry over between levels. That will help you out. So I set everything to 0. So the initial tile swap event that I have here is to say that when the player comes into the level, you want this to be showing something rather than these zigzags. So I want that to pull the 0 out of this image and put it in here for each one. So I'm using the command VM replace tile XY. And you need to type it in exactly like that. So to start this up, you can do GBVM script, and you can do VM replace tile XY comma. Now the next thing it's looking for is which tile you want to replace. So in this case it's 1617. So you can type that in. Alright, the next thing you want to do is use this add reference. So backgrounds. So I want to use this thing which I've called single digits. So single digits pops up here and you can use tile set. Now when you click on it, it's going to copy for you. It's going to copy what you need. And all you need to do is hit Control V and put it in there. So don't mess with that. That's what you want to put in there. So you can also look these arguments up on the GB Studio documentation. It tells you which arguments go for each function. So like if you've worked with Excel, you know, you're familiar with the arguments and what needs to go in there. So the last thing you just need to type in is var. This is going to needs to be all capital as well. Underscore and the variable that you want. So I'm just going to do score 1. Let me just make sure that's the right one. Score 1s. Okay, make sure it's all capital, or it's going to give you an error and cancel your build. So that's how you set up the tiles, the tile swap to begin with. So I'll delete that just because it was for demonstration purposes, but you can set that up one time or in one GBVM for all 4 tiles. So this one's 16, 17, 17, 17, 18, 17, 19, 17. So all my locations here add up to or line up with the variables that I want. Perfect. So real briefly, I'll show you that it works before we get to how this game is scored and how the tiles are updated. Alright, so we can see our initial tile swap is working. So we don't no longer have these zigzags, but we have zeros. So when the scene initiated, if you come back to over here, variable set to 0. So the script knows to go up and pull tile 0 from this sheet and bring it back. So that's what happened here, if you can see the difference. Alright, so now let's go into how we're going to accumulate the score. So basically, just for demonstration purposes, my score is going to be accumulated anytime I move around, jump, or do anything. I'm going to get a score. I'm going to get a point. So all I have it doing is when I press one of these buttons, increment the ones by one point. That's all I got set up. So that's all you need to do on initiation. So all we've done, we've set the variables to a starting value that we want. We've swapped in the first tile that we want one time. Drops a 0 in each one here. And we've pretty much set up our mechanic of how we're going to score and how we're going to play. So that's all good. So now I'll go to my 2 stealth actors. So what this is doing, make sure you first want to go over to on update. So on update, you guys know it checks. It's constantly checking for these conditions. So basically, what I want this to do is, and you already know this if you've done this before, but when the ones get to 9, I want it to turn this one to a 1, and I want it to turn this one to a 0. And then beginning counting up from there. Right, so I want it to go from 9. I want this to go to 1, then I want this to go to 0. And then when we get to 99, I want this to go to 1, and these to go to 0. And then when I get to 999, I want this to go to 1, and I want these to go back to 0. So I did that using if variable compare with value. So it's just checking just what I just said. So if score 100 equals 9, if score 10 equals 9, and if score 1 equals 9, that means we're at 999. So I say set my 1s to 0, my 10s to 0, and my 100s to 0, and add 1 to my thousands. That should give me 1,000. So that's that portion. And then basically, I've nested everything. So if score 100 is equal to 9, or is not equal to 9, it's going to check is score 10 equal to 9. And then if that's true, again, I want to say, well, okay, is it 99? Because we don't want it to just drop to 0 when it hits 90. We want it to drop to 0 when it hits 99. So we go through the same thought process. If it's 99, I want score 1 to drop to 0. I want score 10 to go back to 0. And I want to increment score 100 by 1. So that will give me 1, 0, 0 across here. And the last one, the simple one. Okay, is it 9 in the ones column? If so, increment 10s by 1 and set my 1 digit to 0. So if you guys worked on that before, you already know that, but maybe that's just a way to do it. So that's great. We can see that the variables are going to be changing. So the one last thing we got to do is update these tiles every time those variables change. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to actually take this guy out of the script, out of the scene, so you can see what the difference is. I saved him right over here, and I will show you what the difference is. So like we said, the initialization, it took the 0 and plugged it in for us. Perfect. What's going to happen now, since I took this script, this guy out of here, is the variables are going to increase and decrease. Or they're going to increase in this case in the background, but the numbers, these tiles are not going to change. So I'll show you that now. Let's see. Try it one more time. All right, so after much suspense, here we go. So what I want to show you guys is these numbers are going to start changing, but the tiles here are not going to change because there's nothing looking for the updated values. So let's try this out. So as you can see, I'm moving around. Every time I jump, you can see that it's counting up for me on the left there, but you guys can see those going up, right? So, but this is not updating. This is not updating because there's nothing that's checking for an update. So enter Mr. Stealthman here. He has the same script. He has the same script as the on initiation from the scene right here. Same exact script. Copied it, put it right in on update. On update. So if you're running like a long platformer where this guy will be up in the corner, you want to click this box. For me, it doesn't make a difference because I'm on the same screen the whole time. So if you're making like a long platformer, click this box so it can continue doing that while you're off screen. So we're going to go ahead and put this guy back in the scene. You know what? I'm actually going to just make a whole new actor. So I'm going to hit A. I'm going to put an actor in. I'm going to make him stealth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this event and paste it on update. Don't forget this part. On update. And just replace the script. It's the same exact script. Now it's just checking constantly for... It's just constantly checking for a variable update. Let's go ahead and load it up again. So now, once we do this, you'll be able to see these numbers over here again. But our score bar down here will also be updated. So let's see if this is successful. Okay, look. So we already have movement, which is nice. So it's running kind of sluggy because it's checking too fast. So you might want to think about doing the wait function or something like that to make your actor a little bit smoother. So I can just tell that this guy's really just sluggish. He's really just moving too slow for me. So that's something to think about. So do you really need him to? Do you really need that thing to be checking every 30 times a second, right? It's at 30 frames per second. So do you really need that thing to check 30 times per second? That's up to you. But you guys can see this is working. So every time I jump or I'm, kind of quickly clicking the direction keys here, that you can see that we passed 100 and it took the scripting and dropped everything back to 0. So this is looking like it's a success. So that's how you that is how you do kind of a longer, or this is really a little bit easier to see as well, but a longer score, a score bar heads-up display. So if you want to stick around and see it get up to 1,000, hang out, but that's pretty much how you do it. So we'll speed through this and get up to 1,000, but you'll be able to see that it does work. So that's how you make a prolonged score bar. I'm going to sit here and get up to 1,000, and if you guys found this useful, definitely leave a like and a comment, and let me know what you think. Let me know if you have questions. Thanks. As I was doing this, I realized I had a little issue with the number 909. So once I hit that, it was not dropping my values back down. So I had to do a little tweak to my code. Just wanted to show you that it is working and can get back up to 1,000. So I'm definitely not going to go up to 900 or 9,999 because I just don't have time for it. But this is to show you that it can get up to 4 digits. So there's one other way to do things here to get a score. So I'll show you that really quickly, and it's really simple. It's just when you interact or collide with something, you use a math function to add to your score. So I'll show you that now. So all we're going to do is add an actor by pressing A. Okay, all we have is arrows right now, but that's all right. That's no problem. It's just for demonstration. So what I'm going to do is change that to collision group 1, and on hit with the player, I'm going to say, I'm going to do, just display some dialogue. Say, artifact collected. And then I'm going to do math function. So what I'm just going to do is do ones again, and I'm going to add value. Let's see. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to... Here, how about this? I got an idea. Let's add 1 to the 10s. Let's add 1 to the 10s. Add value 1. All right. So that actually is 10 points. All I'm doing is actually adding 1 to the 10s variable. So if you wanted to add multiple numbers here, like 5, what you would have to do is go back and check your code and make sure it accounts for if it hops over the number 9 in your code. And then you kind of open a whole other can of worms, because then you got to add the remainder back. But in this case, you could just go to the digit you want and add 1 to it, and you can get away with that, just to not give yourself a massive migraine. So we'll real quick boot this up, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. So we're moving around. We can jump up here. Failing at my own game again. All right, now let's see. We're just gonna jump on top of this dude. Artifact collected. Sweet. Okay, it's kind of hard to see. Maybe I should have put the text at the top, but we got 10 points. Went from 21 to 31. So that's how you do that. You know, if you want to collect coins or other stuff, that's kind of how you do it. You definitely want to refine what happens to the actor. Like, you usually deactivate the actor once you find it. Makes it real simple, and you can't crash into it again. So that's how you do it, guys. Let me know if you have any comments or questions, and catch you next time.